Who it is? It's very dark, Sarah. Very dark.
I know. I just turned my camera on. I don't know why. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Huh.
I think you should turn the light on in the room.
If only that was the problem. Off. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Look out. You're just an IT genius.
Well, it's called restarting things.
Right? And are
Yeah.
you open tonight?
We opened last night.
Oh, well, congratulations. And where's your
Thank
cocktail?
you.
Yeah.
First, yeah. Well, that's Friday. A whole bunch of them. That's closing night and the kickoff to spring break.
Oh my God. So you only have 3 performances?
4.
4. Wow. That's a lot of work for 4 performances. Holy shite.
It is. I mean, normally in all school production, a non-musical all school is only 3. So in some ways, this is better, but also worse. So you know how
Right.
it goes.
Wow, you're going into spring break. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's Idaho spring break lined up perfectly. That was our dress rehearsal full tech run week. So that was kind of nice to not
That
have
was nice for you. Yeah. To get to take a little, just do your job. Just your job.
Yes, exactly. No, we had
Hey.
we had 230 people in the theater last night.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, and congratulations. It's a big lift. It's a really big lift.
It is. It's a large weight off of my shoulders.
Did you have another big one this semester? I mean, this before, yeah.
We have technically 4 more shows that we put up. 2 of them are a little mini festival that are the same nights. Let's see, our acting and stage class, one is doing a play called Lafayette #1. The other one is doing We Are the Sea. And then our advanced acting ensemble class just picked The Continuum, which I have not read.
Me neither.
And then we're waiting our final all school, which is the last play of the year. We're waiting, crossing our fingers that we get rights for The Odd Couple.
Oh, really? Why wouldn't you get rights?
Neil Simon takes a long time.
Yeah.
Like I think we're on week 4 of waiting to hear if we get rights, and they've told us Neil Simon just takes a long time. So
Well, it takes really a long time now that he's dead. He's much slower to respond to things, I think.
Yeah. Did you hear back from Mr. Harlan about?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I poked him again this morning, and so now we'll see. I think he's in a mood, so we'll just see.
Oh, well, I know him on Facebook. I'll send him a message.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Because you can say that. I'm in that grad directing class. We'd sure like to see that. Would be great. Won't just be from me. And Kayla, you're in the dark and you're doing something. What are you doing?
An injured cat.
The puppy has a cone.
Oh, the cone of shame. Oh no, what happened?
We think she has a yeast infection on her paw. So she keeps licking it. So she has a vet appointment in about an hour. So we'll get it fixed.
Poor baby. I have underweight cats here who are eating food that is more expensive than I eat. We're hoping. Yikes. And Lane, how are you today?
David, I'm just so happy to see the plentiful sunshine out there.
Right.
It's so beautiful.
Right. It is gorgeous. Had lunch with Michael Brandt today, and we were taking money from. We collected some money through the Imaginary Invalid, Jim Wood, and it was like $100 that we took to Alternatives of Violence on the Palouse today. That was fun.
Nice, that's cool.
Yep. And Jim Wood is back in Alabama, and my heart is aching. So there you go.
I was sad to see him go.
Yes, me too. Me too. Right, where? Sarah has joined. Yes. Just checking, trying to make sure we get Angie here. Gonna keep watching everyone. And there's Chaz. How you feeling today, Chaz? Better? No. You look better. Maybe it's just lighting, but you look like it feels better.
Must be lighting.
We'll take it. We'll take whatever we can get. And Jim, was your trip back home? Was it uneventful?
Uneventful. It wasn't bad at all. I stayed in front of the snow and the storm every step of the way by a few hours at least.
Wow.
So not bad at all.
And there's Ty Harrington and Brian. Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, Chaz and Jim. Chaz, thanks for putting up the sign-up sheet for the project presentations. That was helpful. I want to still figure a way so that we could provide feedback for everybody. That would be my other request and hope. So we could do that and make sure everybody gets feedback, so we don't, if we run out of time to talk about them all, everybody will get their feedback. That'd be helpful. And I see the DV's having his beer early. It's good, good, well done. There's Clint. Clint's not upside down today. It's a really good day. It's Angie. Angie made it. It worked. A miracle. We didn't have to set up a new chat. We didn't have to do all that stuff we did last year because I couldn't understand how to do anything. So that was great. Ali, good afternoon. Jace is on the barnwood wall. Did you make the art, Jace?
My partner did. It's a bunch of wood from old barns in North Dakota. And
Yeah, it's really
yeah,
beautiful.
it's got a window in it. And
Really beautiful. Clint hasn't. Good, Clint. That was a good comment in the chat. Oh, North Dakota. Good. How was your 11-hour drive, Clint? Good.
It was only 9.
Oh, you drove a lot faster. That's good.
Yeah, I have one of my youngest girls in a intense rehab program in the Mayo Clinic right now. So
Oh,
it's a 3-week program. So I was there for a week, and now my wife's there, and then I'm going back there next week. So now we're in Minnesota too.
I sending your daughter 1,000 pounds of love and healing and light and all the rest of it.
Well, thank you very much.
You know that I'll hold her in my thought. In my one thought. My thought. Not good, Brian. Oh, that's no problem, Brian. We'll miss you. Angie, it's great to see your beautiful face. You're in a different spot. Must be a new office.
It is kind of a new old office. I think the previous times that I've seen you, I was probably at home. I'm back in the building, in the actual theater.
That's a good
So
question.
nice.
I'd like to say I know that for sure, but I don't. But I know your wall is not that colorful, so I know at least something is different. Let's see. Avi, good afternoon. Ash, good afternoon. This is great. Great to see everybody's faces. Always great to see our faces. Your faces. Just a minute. I'm almost there. Almost there. All right. I'm working on it. Technology and I are great friends. Just a minute. All right. It's good. Everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Angie, especially thank you for being here. So lucky to have you again. So grateful for you to give your time to talk to us about your life and work at Seattle Rep. And when everybody, we had a chance, I sent out your bio and I sent out the stuff I always send out about you, which is so interesting to me. But since that's come out, 2 things have happened that I think are worth noting. The first one is that you're Angie now and not Angie. I want to know a little bit about that. I mean, I know, but I don't think everybody would know. And then I would love to know about what it's been like to move from being the director of public works to being the general manager at Seattle Rep and how that impacts your work and the theater company. But in any event, welcome, and you look fabulous. Thanks. To you, Angie.
Is it me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to provide some context for Angie versus Angie. So I am an immigrant to the United States. I was born in Kuwait and I am Egyptian. Both my parents are Egyptian. But in the Middle East, you take the nationality of your father and not the nationality of the country in which you were born. So I am Egyptian and now also American. When we moved to the United States in the early 90s, I had been attending an American school in Kuwait, and my kindergarten teacher decided to change my name from Angie to Angie way back then. And my Anglophile, Western devoted parents were like, oh, that'll make it so much easier for her to blend in. So that's what I did when I moved here. I just started using Angie, and with all of the work that's been happening in multiple spaces around identity and claiming your origins and your roots, I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to take the name that my parents gave me when I was born, and I'm going to start using Angie again, because, you know, it's my name. It helps me feel closer to my ancestry. It helps me feel closer to my family. And that's why Angie again.
Oh, that's a great story. Thank you. And it's beautiful, and congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. And the nice thing is I started it in our public works community, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about today, but I started using it again in that space. I'm pretty flexible about it. If somebody calls me Angie, I don't get upset about it. That's just my experience. I'm fine responding to Angie, but Angie just fills my heart with joy and helps me feel connected to my roots. But yeah, everyone's adopted it really beautifully, very thoughtfully, and I'm Angie again, and it's been really rewarding.
Great.
The thing that I am that is new is general manager at Seattle Rep. So I got connected with DLP through my relationship with a former student who knew that I was running the public works department here at Seattle Rep, which is a community-based program that I would love to talk more with you about. We can do it in a casual way where we just kind of chat, but I also have a PowerPoint presentation because I talk about public works a lot, or have in my past, and we can kind of skim through that. But after about 4.5 years of running the public works department, I stepped into this role as general manager, and that is significantly different, but also kind of not, or at least the reasons why I think I'm here remain the same. The reasons why I was drawn to public works, or why public works was right for me, is that it's a values-based program, and we're navigating the work that we do with our hearts and compassion and structures that are not about a stark sense of professionalism or this old methodology of elitism, but that recognizes the artistry and value in each person and their contribution. And while I am no longer responsible for identifying and encouraging people to see the artists within themselves, as somebody who's negotiating contracts and making sure that there's interdepartmental understanding, and that we're working on projects together in a thoughtful manner, those values of compassion and leadership in a new way that is not elitist and not about rigor or, that sort of corporate mentality, those values remain. And I think that's where there's similarities.
Angie, did the rep have a general manager before? Or is it a reordering of how things work? No.
It is a reorg. We've been dreaming about having a general manager for quite some time. And it is a brand new position to the organization. We have historically had, I think a lot of the work that is on my plate was probably divided up between the managing director and the director of production, who eventually became, had the title artistic producer, which is kind of vague and remains vague. So general manager is very much a new role at our organization.
And in cyber stalking you slightly, in terms of just trying to figure out how it worked, it doesn't appear that there's a public works director like you were before. And so I'm guessing that that's a fairly substantive change, organizational change, to have you be the general manager, and very intentional, I would say. That's just my own absolutely know nothing.
I mean,
impression.
I would love to think that it was really intentional, but I think a lot of people were surprised when I said, hey, I think I want to be the general manager. There were a lot of folks that were like, really? But you are like art person. Why do you want to do contracts? And I was like, well, I'm a relationship person, and I think general management is about relationships. And there were a number of things a number of skills that I wasn't necessarily exercising in my role as director of public works. So in terms of the department, it's still there. We've got 2 people on the team there now. We do not currently have a public works director, but we do have an incoming public works manager who will be leading the team. So there'll be growth opportunity for that individual there. And the minute we let the board know that I had been hired, I went through an interview process for this role. So it was a competitive process. It wasn't just handed to me. And after that process, we informed the board of the transition. And the very first question they asked was, what's happening with public works? So it took a while, I'm not going to lie. It took about a year or 2 years for the board to really understand the scope and scale of public works, why this expensive endeavor was an important investment, and for all of them to get so on board with it now that they just can't imagine Seattle Rep without public works. So I think if you're leading a successful program, the program exists whether or not you're there. And I think that's true because the people who make up the program are really the people who are participating in the program. So my departure did not kill public works, but it is in transition, certainly. We're also in transition in another way. Our artistic director is now, has left and is now in Chicago as the artistic director of Writers Theater out there. So we are on the hunt for a new artistic director. Lots of transition.
Everyone buff up your resumes and CVs, you know. Angie, that was great. You just make me smile all the time. You also fed me the perfect transition because I think that most of us, before you came, I didn't know, I knew very little about public works. And I suspect that my friends in the room don't know that much about it either. I'm guessing. And it so transformed what I thought a big company like Seattle Rep would do and was doing. I think it'd be great if you might give us the overview. I think it'd be really helpful.
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Please.
Are you comfortable with me doing this presentation? It just gives me some structure.
I am,
yeah, cool.
And I'm savvy enough that I've let you alert the meeting. I know Chaz can, so we'll try it.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, can I just get sort of like a quick show of hands? How many of you are familiar with the concept of community-based theater? Fantastic, fantastic. So I'll share more with you, but essentially Public Works is community-based theater, which is often grassroots or small in terms of scale and resources. But Public Works gives us the opportunity to examine what happens when you center community in making theater with the resources of a regional theater and within the context of a regional theater so that it's part of the full season. It's not just like a side project community program. It is part of the art that we share with our audience. It is on the main stage, and more will be clear about these vague words that I'm sharing as soon as we talk about this. So without further ado, let me just do some stuff here on my end. I think,
Uh-oh's never good. That's not good.
No, it's just the uh-oh of like Angie is also figuring out how to use technology. Okay, do you see just like a vague standard background?
It's gray. Just all good.
Do you see Seattle Rep Public Works? Perfect. Yes. Okay. So Public Works is, like I said, a community-based program where we work deeply with nonprofit organizations to invite folks from all walks of life to take classes, attend performances and events, and join in the creation of ambitious works of participatory theater. Through this process, strangers become neighbors, creating a region that is welcoming for all. So the idea behind that is that as a program, what we're doing is multifold. We are creating an opportunity for a piece of scale, a large, in our case, usually a musical adaptation of a classic, where folks who aren't traditionally invited to perform on our stage have the opportunity to do so. That we are celebrating the amateur by the purest definition of that word, meaning that the person does it for the love of the thing, not for the money of the thing. Not to say that doing it for money is bad, but this is a space for amateurs. And also it is mixed in, there are about 5 equity actors who also participate in our cast. We do not differentiate between the quality of the work that comes from an equity actor versus one of our community participants. Everyone is contributing to this piece of theater. Seattle Rep works to put theater at the heart of public life. This is the vision of our organization. And one of the ways that we do that is by inviting people who may not be trained as actors to perform on our stage with beautifully designed sets and costumes. This is a values-based program. Our offerings are rooted in equity, imagination, and joy. And for us, that means that everyone has what they need to show up and succeed, that we exercise our imaginations, not only in what we are making, but how we are making it, that we're challenging our preconceived notions of excellence and artistry and professionalism, that we actively cultivate our collective joy. This is an intentional community. Basically, we're building community through the act of making theater. This is not the first community collaborative program, by no means, but Public Works' methodology is a really strong tool inside of regional theaters, as I mentioned. We are part of a cohort of 11 theaters around the country, and technically the world, because the National Theater is also one of our cohort members. Their Public Works program is called Public Acts. This cohort meets monthly to exchange ideas and collaborate on uplifting community participation in our so-called professional theaters. This methodology was adapted and utilized first at the Public Theater in New York, which is why the name Public Works. But it still works regardless of the city or the theater that it's in. Our partnerships with nonprofit and social service organizations is key to our success. That's where we find our actors. That's where we build long-term relationships over time and build artistic capacity. So we currently have about 8 to 10 partners that are active, that we are in deep long-term relationship with. We don't change things up every year. It's the same partners year over year. And we find that building on our relationship year after year helps us connect better to serve both of our goals, the individual partner and ourselves. We reflect and assess each quarter to ensure that the partnership continues to be mutually beneficial. The program doesn't change people itself. It presents a framework for people to make the change they desire, individual and institutional. So we lead with asset-based language. We build co-authored community agreements. We find a balance between artistic excellence and community care or accessibility. We're very intentional about how we talk about it and how we talk about the work and the framework that we use of abundance rather than scarcity. This is a daily practice and requires full institutional commitment. It also requires a lot of humility and a lot of reflection. Our cycle is 3 parts. So we start with classes. We enter into conversations through various activities throughout the year. And then we join together in collaboration for that big annual production. We offer weekly classes at our partner organizations, and we tailor them to the desires of the partner and participants. For example, we offer musical theater at a senior center, and we offer an acting class at a community center in an old part of Seattle where there's a lot of beautiful buildings and folks who've been there forever. But then, of course, gentrification. So there's an opportunity there for really big conversations in our classes in smaller spaces. We also offer one-day workshops at our theater about everything from how to audition to the design process. And in the relationships that we've been building over years, this program has been in place since, and we started offering classes in 2016. There are some folks who are still with us, who started with us in 2016 and still keep coming to classes and performing with us and coming to see all of our shows. And that's quite beautiful. So some of the events that we hold to build community and build relationships across those different nonprofit organizations include potlucks. We have where we hold big celebrations twice a year, usually. Field trips is what we call, usually you think of that as something of being off-site, but really that's bringing everybody from other sites to our site. Field trips is when we invite everyone to come see the shows on our stages that they're not performing in. And we usually give them some behind the scenes access, much like a donor might receive. So we're redefining the VIP through this program as well. We also hold something called mobile box office, where anybody who is utilizing the services of one of our partner organizations may receive a free ticket or two to the theater to see any and all of our shows. So it's an audience development program as well. We also do shows. This is the crown jewel of the program. Friends who've been taking classes, members of the general public, and a handful of folks who act for a living come together to perform the first show in Seattle Rep season every year. Usually it's a musical adaptation of a classic. We started out with a musical adaptation of the Odyssey. We moved on to a production of As You Like It, which is what this picture is from. Then the pandemic hit. And we had to adjust, and like many other organizations, we didn't have a lot of programming available to share with folks. We had some really sketchy archive videos, not sketchy in terms of the video itself, but certainly in terms of the quality. So nothing that we would want to share with our patrons. But we were able to very quickly, because we had these incredible relationships with so many people who knew us and knew how to show up with us, an opportunity to make a Zoom play with 60 people. And we did a musical adaptation of 12th Night. We then, coming back from the pandemic, before things really opened up, decided that we were going to do a film. So we made a musical adaptation film of The Winter's Tale, followed by our very first commission, The Emerald City, which is an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, that we weren't quite ready to do a full production of, and so we did a 60-person staged reading of the piece. And this year, we're so very excited to be returning to the stage when we have close to 100 people on stage, rather than 60, rather than a measly 60. And we'll be doing The Tempest this year. Okay, great. Oh, did I? Nope. Yep. On track. So the other piece of this is that it's free. It's free to everyone who participates, to our partners, to the people who come see the plays. It is not pay to play. No one is charged to see any of our shows. No one is charged for meals that we offer, because food is a big part of what we do. No one is charged. No one is asked to pitch in for gas money. No one is asked to open their pockets. We do ask for donations, obviously, because it's not free to make it. But we don't ask people to pay to participate. So our development department works very hard to ensure that the money doesn't get in the way of the joy we're cultivating, the experiences we're sharing, and the community we're building. Lots of people participate in the community in this project. Community college students, international students, seniors, folks in tech, immigrants, Seattleites, Starbucks baristas, veterans, small business owners, retirees, lawyers, homemakers, scientists, children, et cetera, et cetera. Like everybody and anybody is welcome to be part of this project. We do not claim to heal. That is not our mission. But we have seen people heal because of the container that we've built. Our team and teaching artists are trained in trauma-informed practice, mental health first aid, decolonization, and race and social justice. We know the value of allowing people who are different from each other to come together to work collectively toward a shared goal. And we have fun. Like, that's at the heart of it. We have a good time. That's all I got, friends. And y'all are amazing. That is the basic rundown of what the program is and what we do.
Ooh, that was great. Thanks, Angie.
Mhm.
Tempest, when does it go up? When does it-
Tempest goes up the last weekend in August. We start rehearsals on July 17, maybe, and then our equity actors join us 2 weeks later. So they have a little bit of catching up to do, and then we go up for 4 performances the last weekend in August.
Great. And I think you mentioned this also, the classes are free at the satellite institutions as well, and transportation and all that stuff is.
Yes.
Great. All right, friends, what questions might you have for Angie before but what would you like to know more about Public Works or your own impressions where you are? I saw Avi, you just are doing something that has that same component to it as well.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating because we went from working at Encores, which had a very different, it just has changed a lot. I don't know if you know about the Encore City Center programming, but we went from having a very Jack Viertel, who ran the program, who had his own, way of doing things and methodology, and then Lear de Bessonet took over, and she came from running this program at the Public. She was I believe she really kind of like spearheaded it in this way. And so she was running that, and now that she has taken over Encores, she is trying to find ways to put Public Works style programming into the city center shows. And so we just cast a whole bunch of Oliver orphans who are going to be featured in the Encores production of Oliver through the DOE city, through like a whole citywide search. And we cast them from schools in Harlem and in Queens and from all different things. And we taught them essentially a piece of audition choreography that they had the option to go into City Center and audition with, but we taught it to them like during the school day. So we just like went into the schools and taught them this, which was cool.
That is really beautiful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Lear de Bessonet was the person who sort of brought this methodology to the Public and implemented this program at the Public. And then, along with her team, created this multi-state, multinational program, and then went on to do other things, right? Because that's what you do. But her spirit remains in the program, but also clearly her spirit and connection to community-based work is, as you're describing, Avi, is being implemented in her subsequent work. That's really beautiful. And similarly, my predecessor, so I did not implement this program here at Seattle Rep. My predecessor, Mariah C. Kaminsky, who's now the artistic director at Pittsburgh Public Theater, implemented it here. And when she moved to Pittsburgh Public Theater, she started doing something similar to what you're describing, Avi, but instead of Oliver, it was A Few Good Men. And with her company, they invited veterans to be part of the audition process and to be part of the production. So it's cool. Not, and they played like a chorus of sorts, I think. I didn't get to see the show, sadly, but knowing that there are directors and artistic directors and creative practitioners out there who recognize that years of training is not necessarily the only way to be equipped to perform theater and to be part of making this art. It's kind of the key here.
That was great. Thanks. And thanks, Avi. Yeah, Lear's I didn't know that Lear was the same person. I only know Lear through the Encores work. So that's a great thing for me to learn about. So thanks for that. More feedback, more questions. This work is so inspiring to me. I'd love to know what you all want to know more about. Go, Lane.
Angie, hello. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, could you talk to us just a little bit about how this all worked through the shutdown? I saw the preview of, was it 12th Night? And that was some crazy Zoom madness going on there. And it piqued my curiosity. I wonder if you could talk to that for just a sec.
Y'all, that was crazy. Oh, it's so crazy. So when I was hired in 2018, it was right after they had completed the Odyssey and it was highly successful and Mariah was moving on. And when I was hired, I have a background working with Cornerstone Theater Company, which is another theater in Los Angeles that also does community-based work. So I came in having already sort of lived a version of this life. And having worked in the production department as the associate production manager here at Seattle Rep. So I had a relationship to the organization and a relationship to community-based work. And I say this all to say that it was because of the relationships that existed internally between me and the production department and a key contributor here, I don't even know what her title is anymore, but she's really like, there's always that one person in the artistic department who kind of does everything. Hattie Andrus is that person for us, and she has been involved in every single public works production and has been an associate director on every single show, or a director in the case of 12th Night. But as a staff member, we were able to kind of just sit down and talk together, and we were like, listen, one of the mandates that I had, or the goals that I had when I started, was to ensure that we did something of scale that could galvanize the community at least once a year. And once the pandemic hit, we were like, well, I guess we can't do a show, but we've got to do something to bring people together, especially now. So Hattie and I were talking, and we were like, let's do a Zoom play. Like, I know it's not a thing. I mean, like, I know some people are experimenting with this. It's kind of exciting to try and think about what that means. It's ubiquitous now. Like, we all know what this is, but at the time it wasn't, there weren't a lot of people who had actually executed this before. And we're like, well, we don't really know what we're doing, but let's figure it out as we go. And we identified the right group of people who were willing to stay up very late nights to figure out how to do this. This meant that each of our participants, and this is where our partnerships became really critical and helpful. For those individuals from the general public, oftentimes those folks are folks of means, folks of at least middle-class resources who probably have their own computer, who probably have access to a quiet room in their house. But a lot of the folks that we meet through our social service partners don't necessarily. But because of the relationship that we have with our social service partners, many of those partner organizations were able to provide our participants with the technology they needed to participate in a project like this. And in places where, because we didn't have the means to be able to do that. And in places where like somebody needed a headset or somebody needed a microphone, there was me driving over to people's houses all over the Seattle region, not just Seattle, to deliver scripts, to hard copies, because not everybody is comfortable using technology to read their scripts, to deliver those microphones and headphones and whatever like things. We invited people we had like costuming sessions where we talked about what clothes they could wear from their own wardrobe. We had rehearsals on Zoom. We then sat down and we were lucky enough to be in relationship with this incredible local documentarian who was like inspired by Public Works during the Odyssey and has been capturing our process over the years and is like mulling over the idea of creating his own full-length documentary about Public Works. So he was there to help us understand the editing process, and he helped us figure all of that out. We also had a genius musical director who could help us figure out the musical portion of everything, not just the teaching music over Zoom, but also figuring out how to edit all of that music in with all of the videos so that it was seamless and sounded at least presentable. We also had to set up times with each participant to record their own square and then put it all in together the way we wanted to see it. So we recorded each and every person independently. And we had breakout rooms and Zoom sessions. There were times that we asked people to just record themselves on their own phone and submit that footage. And we also, in an effort to be accessible, which is a big part of what we try to do, we held 2 in-person recording sessions where we maintained social distance. We masked unless they were about to record, and that's when they took their mask off. And we recorded them in one room, and we just kind of scheduled them in a staggered way so that we could get everybody in. So that's kind of how we addressed it. We took, again, our values, our gumption, our desire to make art together, and we did it. And then the fact that we knew all of the people in the show, because we had been working with them for 3 years up to that point, made it possible for them, A, to trust us, and B, to ask for what they needed to be successful because they knew that we would listen, and allowed us to ask more of them than one might of a volunteer in another circumstance, because we had a relationship built. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, and it looks as though I want to watch that play now. It looks as though the product was extremely effective, right? In the end product, even just that trailer was quite moving.
Yeah, I'm really glad you felt that way. I mean, I felt really proud of them. They did an incredible job. We had closed captioning and actually like edited it the night before, like right up to the last minute when we were going to air it. There are equity actors in that show, so unfortunately we can't make it available again because of the just union regulations and the CBA. But the other thing that was sort of a behind the scenes nitty gritty business contractual thing that was odd about that one is that we did that on a theater authority agreement. I don't know if anybody is familiar with any of that mumbo jumbo. Okay, well, all that is to say, we got permission from equity to do it. We have to get permission from equity. We have to get a concession from Actors Equity every time we do this project because it is not based on the LORP B agreement, right? Like it is outside of that scope. So they let us know how many equity actors we have to have in our show in order to be able to produce it on our stage. And it is important that we produce it in the larger space, because just for capacity, but also because of the investment of scale and investment of excellent, beautiful art and the investment of who we're calling excellent, right? But all that is to say, the equity actors on that project could only work, including recording, for a total of 25 hours. That's all we had with them. So they had to learn, rehearse, record the entire show in 25 hours. It was quite the feat.
That's insane. Can I just ask one really quick question, Sides, and I'll shut up? The equity actors. It sounds like maybe, is that a company? Do you have a company of 5 actors that you do? They audition
Nope,
every time yeah, interesting.
Yep. Yep. And, they're usually, we try to focus on local actors. That's not always the case. Like in the Odyssey, our Odysseus came from New York. But we try to focus on local actors, and we try to identify actors who understand the spirit that we're trying to move forward with. So they have to be ready to work with community and know that the level of experience is going to vary, and the level of interest in like schmacting is also going to vary. So some folks just want to be there for the friends, and they want to be the third bush from the left. And some people want to line and they want to learn how to act. And as an equity actor, your role is in a public works show, your role is not just to show up and perform. Your role is also mentorship and modeling. So that's part of what we look for in our cast. It's not just about like what your audition is, but what's your spirit.
And Angie, haven't you had repeaters? You have had
Yes.
actors that went, no, I want to do that.
Yes, we have had many repeaters. We also have had this really lovely thing wherein the audition process that includes, so for us, there's sort of like a multi-tier guarantee of sorts. If you attend our classes, then you're almost guaranteed a spot. If you are come to us through one of our community partners, but don't attend classes, but are like receiving services, you're sort of the second tier. And then third tier is folks who are from the general public, oftentimes people who are going to the University of Washington or Cornish College for the Arts, or young fringe actors, young, not necessarily, fringe actors, who want to get a chance to be seen on the Seattle or perform on the Seattle Rep stage. And all of those folks get to participate. And so there are times when, yes, the equity actors are paid a standard LORT B equity contract. Some of the general public participants who join us are early career actors, and we have had situations where one year they come in as members of the community, and the next year they come in and are cast as equity actors, and the year after that they're cast in another show at Seattle Rep as an equity actor. So it becomes also a sort of pipeline for us to meet new people.
Ooh, that's
Thank you, Angie, for letting me talk with you for 20 minutes.
Thank you. I am
great,
keenly
Lane.
aware that there are a couple of very patient people.
Very patient. Well, of course, Lane's also an equity actor. So he of course has these questions as are others. Carissa, thank you, my dear.
Yes, thank you. I've never heard of community-based theater. So today is my first day. Thank you for that introduction. And I'm intoxicated and very excited. So my question, living in Central Florida and not a huge city like Seattle, what does your funding look like, and how can smaller communities build this into their practice without large houses that fund them?
So that is a lovely question. So our budget, programmatic and production, all told for our theater is about $1 million. That is partly because we are also an IATSE union house. So there are a lot of really high expenses that come with producing at Seattle Rep. So our funding is sort of broken up. Most of it is individual giving. So it's the relationships that we've built with people over time. It's also their specific draw to this vision and the idea that we are connecting people across experiences and neighborhoods in our region, that we are building relationships, we are dismantling preconceptions, so people are drawn to the spirit of the program, and so they give that way. We were able to tap some funding resources that are not generally available to theater companies because of that social service connection. I will say that that we apply to a number of grants. Most of the granting that we receive is local funding from foundations and government entities. The public theater, when we were first talking with them about this, was like, oh yeah, the money's just going to come rolling in. Well, apparently in New York it does, but in Seattle you have to work a little harder for it. But I would also say that this is just the structure and methodology that allows this regional theater to do it. There are so many organizations that have been doing this kind of work with far fewer resources at significant scale for their resources, like for their level, their financial budget, for decades. So this is new for regional theater. It's not new in our world. I would say looking at Sojourner Theater Company and looking at Cornerstone Theater Company are two great starting points. They're the places that I kind of know about. There's lots of this kind of work in Minneapolis. There was somebody who was talking about Minneapolis. There's a lot of this kind of work in Minneapolis. And I think a key distinction here is the difference between community theater and community-based theater. That community theater is a space where a community of people who love making theater, who maybe did it in high school, have careers of their own, decide to make theater together, right? And like they've kind of formed their own thing. Community-based theater is a space where there's often a mix of professionals and non-professionals. There is a very clear intentionality around providing access and social justice work and applied theater practices, and yes, community need. So those are that's a distinction that I find it important to make. But I would say it is very possible to do it in whatever size city you're in. It's just about who wants to show up. I mean, when I was working with Cornerstone, for example, my work was specifically in their Summer Institute program, which is an educational opportunity for adults from all over to come together and learn more about community-based practice. They have 2-day intensives that are also available for folks to learn more about their methodology for community-based practice. And they happen throughout the year. And I think now they're doing more of them online. Their budget has fluctuated over time, but I think generally speaking, it's $1 million budget at Cornerstone. And they only produce when they have the funding that they need to produce a piece of theater. And they usually write a piece in response to the community that they're in, and then cast mainly people from the community to be in the show. So we were in farming communities. Like the first Cornerstone show that I did was in a town called Fowler, California, which is the raisin capital of the world. And they grow grapes for raisins and peaches and nectarines in the area. And there were people from about 3 different farming towns who came together to rehearse in the heart of Fowler at the town hall. We rehearsed, I think, in the town hall, and then we created a stage in the central local park where everybody from town came to see the show for our 3 performances. And they saw themselves highlighted, like their stories were on stage in this case. And they could celebrate themselves, which was a key part of our goal with that particular project through Cornerstone. So yes, it is absolutely scalable up and down, depending on the size of your budget.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a great question and great response. Angie, before we go to DB, Avi wrote the $1 million that you were talking about for the budget for public works. That's $1 million for public works. That's not the overall Seattle rep budget.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. Yes, that is Seattle rep budget overall. It's changing because, the pandemic has hit us all really hard, but we were, at the time that Public Works was being implemented, we were growing to be a $17 million organization. I think we were growing from 15 to 17, and now we're very intentionally and thoughtfully scaling back to 13. But this is a multi-million dollar, and the Public Theater, for example, is a multi-million dollar institution. And the Public Works Department is one portion of that.
Thanks, Angie. DB, thanks for your patience. Go, man, go.
Sure, no worries. Angie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate getting to hear your story, but I'm the education and outreach coordinator at a regional presenting house in Macomb County, Michigan. So we're in metropolitan Detroit, and it's a really interesting community dynamic we have going on. It went for Obama both times, and then it went for Trump twice. So it had always gone for the presidential winner from Reagan until this past election. So it's a really interesting community to be serving. And my question is, with the relationships with the partner organizations, like those social service organizations you were speaking about, how do you go about cultivating those from the ground up? My position, I'm in my 5th year now, but it was a new position that I assumed when I was hired in. So we're still laying foundations. There was some legacy programming that had been going on, but I'm trying to be much more intentional with access and pushing my boss on that front. So I'm just curious how you began the inroads to finding these partnerships to truly serve the entire community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. That's an excellent one. So just a couple of things. You're a presenting house. I want to share that one of our Public Works cohort theaters or cohort organizations is the Tulsa Performing Arts Center, and they are a presenting house, and they have something called the Orbit Initiative. So it's not called Public Works, but it's essentially a very similar program focused on partnership that then leads to some sort of cultivating event. So that's, very translatable. The partnerships are where it all starts. And I think the spirit with which you enter the partnerships informs the spirit of the relationships that you have with participants. I always start by like dating for a year before I announce that that organization is a partner. And I ask them outright, are you ready to be a publicly stated partner with us? And I tell them up front, let's figure out what this relationship looks like for a year. Let's try to offer one-day workshops or classes or like weekly classes for 10 weeks at a time for 3 quarters. And let's see like how your participants, how your constituency responds to these offerings. Are people showing up? Do you need to help us recruit? Do we need to have an information session with folks to let them know kind of what this is about? In a lot of social service settings, like our partnership with the Renton Veteran Center, for example, the staff was very excited about us because they were like, oh my goodness, all the studies that we've been reading about social and emotional well-being and PTSD and the benefits of being in community with each other and veterans being in community with non-veterans is really important to the goals that we have for our residents at this permanent supportive housing facility. We're so excited to have you. We showed up. Very few people came. They were really intimidated by hearing that we were offering an acting class. So we were like, you know what, how can we adjust what we're offering or even just adjust what we're calling it to make it a little more approachable? And so we called it a storytelling class and more people started to come. We said, you know what, this could be multi-generational storytelling. So people were able to come and bring their kids. People were, and we said like, no experience necessary. You could just show up and hang out with us for a while, but just like be part of the circle. That's all we're going to ask you to do. So lower the barrier, be really clear about what you're offering, work with the partner to identify the real entry point, and that's what leads to a successful relationship, I have found.
Thank you so much. That was very, very helpful.
That was great. Scott is in Tulsa from last year, who was in, so he knew about that. So excellent. It was wonderful. Thank you. Avi, lovely Avi, go please.
I just was kind of thinking about some of what has been said in this conversation, and I wanted to know your maybe thoughts and feelings about how much you feel the let's see, how do I say this?
This is going to be a hard question, isn't it?
No. It seems to me that part of the draw of this kind of programming is that it is supported by the resources of a large institution. It feels to me almost like there is a largesse to the work and there is an inspirational component to it, right? It feels like the draw is to be on the Seattle rep stage, or the draw is to be in a play that is a, Shakespeare in the Park with all of these people in New York, and you're having this experience that is supported by like a really large organization. So I suppose, like, how does one create the structure and so it seems like, I guess, how does one create something where it feels like there is that kind of draw and excitement if it is not supported by a large institution that already is saying like, hey, by showing up to this thing, you, a lay person or a member of the community, is going to get to be part of this really big, I guess what I'm just trying to ask in a nutshell is public works sort of by necessity almost has to be supported by a large theater for it to have that kind of like draw element of like, wow, you get to be part of this, right? I mean, if you do it in another way, it still is helping and supportive, but like it's slightly different, right? And I don't know, I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, I hear your question, or I hear sort of the space that we're in.
Yeah,
I think yes, public works requires an institution for support, because public works really as a methodology, because like Lear and her team wrote a guidebook for how to implement a public works program in your theater. So there is like a process by which you get to call it public works. Mm-hmm. It is not the only way to do it, Public Works leads with the like, you get to be on a major regional stage, you get to have a gorgeous costume just like any other performer on our stage, regardless of celebrity status. Like, you get the same thing that the professional actors get to experience. But I think that for some people who participate in Public Works as a community, that's less of a draw. They're there for their friendships. They're there because this is their Rotary Club. This is their bowling league. This is their secular faith space, faith community.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're all walking in with the same intentionality, the same set of values. We've created universal community agreements. Like, we all know what we're here to do together. So I think that portion of the work that isn't about grandeur is translatable regardless of size, regardless of budget, regardless of scale. That's what a company like Cornerstone is able to do, where like, you know, the budget is pretty small in comparison to Seattle Rep. And you know, the production that we did in East Salinas, California, which is what Steinbeck wrote East of Eden about, is like, it included you just sort of like beg, borrow, and steal and utilize the resources of the community to make it happen. So you ask through the network, who has access to a quinceañera dress that we can buy for a minimal amount of money, put some profit into the economy of put some money into the economy of the region, and invest in like the people, seamstresses in the area or whatever. But it doesn't end up having to be, you can still get beauty and scale without the union designers or the union stagehands or the, you know, a lot of the theatrical expense goes into labor, and most of that labor is unionized labor. And for a good reason, a lot of that unionized labor is very expensive. So honestly, I don't think our budget would be near $1 million if we were not at Seattle Rep, and we could probably produce this, you know, for like, I could probably do this show for $100,000 with a lot of volunteerism and commitment and love.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for just kind of speaking on that. I think I think I didn't have like a question as much as I just sort of wanted to hear you say things around that subject. So thank you. That was
I hear you. But I do think you're onto something. Like, there are different ways to offer community-based practice, but I think at the heart of it is the spirit of the work. Are you entering in the conversation with an idea that like, we're living in a hierarchy where I am better than you, and therefore you must do what I tell you because I am the director, or I am the costume designer and you must wear what I tell you to wear? Or are you walking in and being like, I'm a human, you're a human, my responsibility is to put clothing on you. My responsibility is to help you look amazing on the stage and to unpack and understand the story that we're trying to tell and help you tell your portion of it in a way that allows me to tell the whole story collectively all together. So I think it's more about humanity than it necessarily is about the scale of the thing, to my mind.
Beautiful.
Well, I love that. Thank you. That was really beautiful. That was good. I'm glad we recorded it, NGO. Get you to it. That's really good. Dear Jace, to you. Thanks for your patience.
Of course. Hi, thank you so much for coming today again. I think this might sort of segue from the previous question. Given that you've been in existence as an organization for 60 or 70?
It's about 60 years, yeah.
63. I would imagine, I'm making an assumption, but I would imagine that there'd be quite a profound impact on the politics and the culture of the area at large. So I'm wondering, I'm just curious about the relation with other theaters, even, you know, down to Portland, because you're kind of close. And then also within other areas of the, I guess not just the public sector, but private as well, but I'm thinking of schools, police force, just the general sort of tentacle spread that surely must be. And then I'll throw this, I would imagine there's data and measurements over the last decades that have been compiled. So I'm just super curious about all of that.
You have a lot more trust in us than we deserve. So yes, there is some data, there is some data collection, absolutely. Obviously, many of our grants require data collection. We have been certainly interested in assessing the program and its efficacy and its like the way it sort of supports community, and have had a lot of like false starts, I guess is the term. So I would say that that is probably the weakest link for us, is we have not successfully tracked and measured the answers to the real questions around whether or not public works is successful. Like, we can feel it, and we have documentation through our reflections and our questionnaires that we ask after every project. But we haven't, like, at one point we were in relationship with Seattle University and invited a professor to sort of help us structure an analysis and investigation of the program and where it was successful, and invited a number of MFA students to come in and collect data and be part of that research process. That was interrupted by the pandemic. Prior to that, however, in New York, a sociologist, Dr. Shirley Bryce Heath, did conduct a multi-year analysis of the public theater's experience of mounting their first production. So I do believe she's published on the subject, and she came and published a report for us on our first years in the implementation of the program in the first year. So we have that snapshot, and we've made attempts throughout the years to do that. But honestly, since I started in 2018, we have not done the same thing twice. We've been like just trying to adjust and adapt and dodge and weave. Is that the term? Dodge and I don't know. I don't know enough about boxing. So we haven't really had a chance to do that properly, and I wish we had. So that's the space to that. Bob and weave. Thank you. Bob and weave. So that's the answer to that question. In terms of the other piece, I'm not sure I fully understand what you're asking. I will say that when this program was implemented here, leave it to Ash. Ash knows. Thank you, Ash. I thought Ash was leaving. When we implemented the program, I was not working at Seattle Rep. I was working at a different theater company called Act Theater here in Seattle. And the minute they started it, I was like, I'm so jealous. Thank goodness this is happening. I'm so excited this is happening. I want to be part of that. And I think the response from other theater companies was, I want to be part of that. So there have been conversations about partnerships, like, do we partner with a children's theater and have a youth chorus that includes some young people that came to us through their programming? Do we, et cetera, et cetera. I will say that the Village Theater locally, or semi-locally, regionally locally, and the Fifth Avenue Theater have similar programs that are very youth-focused. Our program is multi-generational, and these other theater companies, their programs are pay to play. They do have financial aid and some scholarships and things of that nature, but I think they are part of the economic structure of the organization. This is multi-generational. We've had families be part of our shows, which allowed parents to be part of the shows because their kids were with them, and they didn't have to worry about childcare. But we've not entered into partnership with other theater companies. I will say what we have done, which is part of the template of Public Works is the previously produced shows or adapted pieces that we have been doing that the public has already done include what they call cameo groups, or groups of artists or local entities that can provide an artistic bump to the show in some way. So in New York at the Public, that included, you know, the cast of Sesame Street. In Seattle, that included the drum line from the local football team. That kind of thing. We, I think one of the photos you saw had a Chinese lion in one of our productions. That was a cameo group. That was a local lion dance troupe that competes internationally. And we entered into a conversation and we were like, hey, we're doing this show as you like it. There's a scene where Orlando is in a fight with the lion and we need a lion. Or Orlando, now I can't remember the details. It's like he's in a fight with a lion, but there's a snake involved. And we had a local artist had made this like 8-foot long snake puppet that she had already used at a festival, a local festival. And we were like, hey, can we rent your puppet? And we made that, and she was technically a cameo group as a local artist, as a local puppet artist. So we utilize the skills and expertise of other people around. The nice thing is about the lion dance troupe is when we told them the story that the snake comes and the lion is attacking Orlando, that they're in competition, and the coach was like, listen, in my culture, the lion is not an aggressor toward people, but in fact the lion is meant to be a guide and in good relationship with humans. So can there be a situation where, like, can we adjust the storytelling for a split second and make it so that there is the potential for conflict with the lion, but what we discover is that the lion is trying to protect Orlando from the snake. And so Orlando says, go get the snake. And the lion goes and gets the snake and helps save him. So we made a little adjustment because of the relationship and the conversations that we were having, and because we wanted them involved. Yeah. Does that speak to your question even a little? Okay.
More than a little, I'm thinking. That was great. More for NGL. I have some questions too, but yours have been so good. I don't know if you have more.
Those are good questions.
All right, I'll ask. I want to know, help us all know about your own background in terms of how you got from, say, university to through Public Works, or what was your training in, to Public Works to now general manager? Because I know you have been stage manager, you've done management stuff too, obviously. But I'd love to know how you got from school, graduate school, to this place, please and thank you.
Absolutely, happy to share. So I don't know about all of your paths to theater, but I came to theater because when I moved to the United States, it was really hard to build community. My mom and my brother and I were relatively isolated in terms of community. When we moved to Tucson, Arizona, we were the only Egyptians around. We were just kind of all by ourselves. So I was trying to figure out, how to adapt to American culture despite having access and exposure to it for 13 years. But also how to build community for myself. It was really important to me. It was a part of my core understanding of life. And theater was the place where I found that. I felt seen. I felt like we could do something fun together. I felt like we were working toward a shared goal. I didn't have language for any of that as a kid, but certainly that was my experience of it. And I was like, well, I guess I can make a living at this. I can actually make this a job. So I got my undergraduate degree with a focus in stage management, because I liked sort of being a little bit removed and watching everything and contributing to everything in some way, and being a support person. And then right after undergrad, I moved to Chicago and was freezing cold as a girl from the desert. And it was like, screw Chicago, I'm applying to graduate schools in California. And then I went to grad school at UCSD for stage management. And right when I was in the middle of that program, I was like, you know what? I love stage management, but this freelance life is not for me. I need stability. Hello, production management. So I started doing that work. And a little bit of company management work, but of course also did a little bit of stage management down there. But meanwhile, my areas of interest were usually in shows that were maybe political nature, or asked a really big social question, or felt like they were about something more than your than, you know, like something more than Noel Coward. As much as I loved enjoying a nice Noel Coward, I was like, okay, well, this is pretty, but like, what else? I also felt that my experience as an immigrant, I felt like a lot of what I was doing was trying to justify my existence, particularly because the time that I was coming here was during the first Gulf War. And there was a lot of conversation about Kuwait, the country that I was born and had been raised in, and you know, who I was, what I was, how we lived, what we did. So a lot of my needs in that moment were about multiculturalism, cross-cultural understanding, inviting people to see my humanity and see my family's humanity. So I think that was always sort of living underneath the work that I was drawn to. And after I finished my graduate program, there was a split second where I was like, I'm going to move back to Kuwait and Egypt and reconnect with my culture and spend time with my family. I tried to do that. Full disclosure, my father was a very controlling human, and I was like, maybe this highly assimilated American girl doesn't need to live with her father in Kuwait as a 20-something. So I moved back to the States. I have a cousin who lives up here in Seattle, and he was like, hey, come check us out. I think you'd really like this town. There's a lot of arts going on over here, and I know that you're a theater person. Came up here, accomplished my dream of working in a production office at a major regional theater. And then after I did that for a few years, I was like, you know, this work is really beautiful. This work is really excellent. What's it all about? Like, do I need to see a show about Rothko? Is that really important? Do I feel like we're really telling something here? I mean, the performances are incredible, but what else? So I Googled community, education, adult, and found Cornerstone Theater, and attended their summer institute, which is a month-long residency in, as I mentioned earlier, Fowler, California. And then I was so drawn to the company. It's an ensemble-based organization. They have a pretty small staff, and they've evolved over time. I think I was in relationship with them in like the early teens is when I started playing around with Cornerstone. So it's been about a decade. And we just worked really hard to figure out how I could work for them. I was like, please, I want to work for you. And they were like, hey, we think we might want to work with you. So we figured it out. Eventually ended up running that summer institute, which was that month-long educational program, and helping develop the plays that were happening, facilitating community relationships for our needs, but also for the partnerships that could lead to the playwright creating the piece of theater that we would then produce at that company. In order to work with Cornerstone, my wife and I had to move to Los Angeles, which after living in San Diego for 6 years, I was like, ooh, I wouldn't mind going back to Southern California. But in the end, Los Angeles was not for us. So we moved back up to Seattle, where she's from. And I hopped around from theater job to theater job. I worked at Seattle Opera for a while. I worked at a contemporary theater for a while. I helped open a new performing arts center in a small city called Federal Way between Seattle and Tacoma. And then the public works job became available. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, my first big girl job was at Seattle Rep. I'd had semi big girl jobs in San Diego, but like this felt like my first big girl job. So it's kind of home in some ways. And I get to do community-based theater, and it's going to be with some money behind it, and I don't have to find all of the money. Yes. So yeah, it was a very exciting opportunity. It just jumped right in. It was, and I feel like everything that I was doing was building on the thing that came before, and honestly also was very much part of my core programming.
That was great. Bravo. That was a great journey. All the way from Kuwait to here. That was awesome, Inji. I asked you a question earlier about actors returning to the program, the public works. What I was really meaning is the equity actors. That I'm curious about what happens to actors when they go through that process and how it affects them, because I imagine that's also quite startling and wonderful for the Candy, as well as for directors, a regular theater director that, you know, works in regional theater, and then they're doing this thing with a cast of 10,000 people who are varying everything, and what that journey is like and how you find them. Good luck with all of that.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, for the actor question is a very easy one, and I'll say that 99% of the equity actors who perform for public works are like, I want to be involved. Some of them come out of teaching artistry retirement so that they can teach for public works. Some of them, there's a woman named Alex Tavares who was just recently cast in The Tempest, and we haven't announced that yet, so that's like, but don't tell anyone yet. Don't publicly share this recording until after The Tempest. But all that is to say, like, Alex has come back to us. This is her third show with us with Public Works. So there is something about, like, and I think this is true for the entire theater company as well, as everybody, once they do Public Works, is like, oh, right. I remember why I love theater now. Like, I am reminded of the spark that brought me here. So it's pretty magical to be around a bunch of people who are in awe of the work that you do for a living, and who then become your friends and your colleagues. It's really, really beautiful. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It is hard to find a director, and it's hard to find a writer that can understand balancing community need, artistic excellence, and telling a good story and process. Like, process is just as important as product in our situation. And it is a thin line that we have to walk daily between, like, where the compromise is going to happen. Is the compromise going to come in the community care piece, or is the compromise going to come in the art making piece? So oftentimes we have found success with directors who have experience in an educational setting, because they tend to understand what it means to put a group of students in a show that maybe you wouldn't necessarily have cast those individuals in another environment. They often understand how to get something out of someone who's kind of getting in their own way and has their own preconceived notions about what acting means. You know, we've been very lucky. I'll say there are two directors in particular that have really stood out as, like, amazing for us. Most of our directors have been really great, but they were hard to find. Timothy Begay, who teaches at Cornish College for the Arts here, is directed As You Like It and was fantastic. Desdemona Chang directed our Winter's Tale film, and it was her first time making a movie, and she was equally fantastic. And man, if I could bring either one of them back in a heartbeat. And of course, Mariah C. Kaminsky, who implemented the program, directed the very first production, and she also, like, hands down, no problem whatsoever. But we do have to be very thoughtful about who we invite to be in the equity cast, who we invite to be on the creative team. Our music directing team has been the same for all of the productions that we've done. And I think we're changing it up this year just because of availability. And the new person who's joining us runs the sort of sister project at the Fifth Avenue Theater. So he has some sense of centering community. That becomes a key factor in determining who can work on shows like this.
And dude, before I hand it over to Ash, do those you mentioned two that were really special, not saying any of them weren't. Do they go on to work more in traditional regional theater? Is that why you can't get them back out? Or yeah,
that's not necessarily why we select them, but yes, they are recognizable names locally. So Timothy is, like we're in conversation with Tim. He also directed like A Raisin in the Sun the year before, and Des Chang directs all over the country. If you haven't seen her work, can you tell I'm a huge fan? I'm just a big Des Chang fan. So if you get a chance, check her out. She's really great. But she does a lot of work with Shakespeare, and that was really helpful to us as well.
That's great. Thank you, Angie. Ash.
So your backstory and then what you were just talking about made me think of two questions, but I want to preface it with a tiny backstory from what I'm dealing with in Florida right now. So Florida, Disney offers everyone their equity card. Many of our regional productions don't have equity slots because they cost more. So I have worked as a professional actor here, do not have my equity card because equity actors it's harder to get roles. You work more if you don't. Well, the Straz Performing Arts Center, which is like the fourth largest something performing arts center in the country, just cut their Straz produced program that had a whole lineup. It's the regional theater I've worked at the most in Tampa. And they cut the entire program rather abruptly because it simply costs too much. And they'd rather bring in, touring performances and fill the spaces with more touring performances instead of hiring their local actors. They also have Patel Conservatory. That is a, student program that is pay to play, and they do performances and things like that. But it's those performances pull revenue, but also are funded by the classes that they teach there because those students come from the classes. I say all of that to ask, I think that the new leadership there would think an idea like this would both be possibly cheaper and have a better community face to the community, right? So two questions. One, does the funding only come from the Seattle Rep performances, or is there additional grant funding in that sense for the Public Works program? And question two, what would be your elevator pitch to a program that doesn't currently do this to try to convince them that this is what the community needs?
Well, go to it. Go to it.
Very good question. So, sorry, you said elevator pitch, but also as you were describing it, I had a lot of thoughts that I wanted to share, and then I lost the first question.
The funding, does it only come from Seattle Rep performances,
yes,
or does it have other grant situations?
So yeah, the funding is actually not coming from Seattle Rep performances. It is almost entirely donations and grants. So and the percentage is I don't remember the exact percentage, but it leans more heavily in individual giving. So it's mostly donations from individuals, various sizes of donations. Like the smallest donation we've ever received is $2. And that's, members of our community will participate by donating. So we do have donors in our community. One thing in the scenarios that you're describing, in terms of a space that has decided to cancel its own programming because it's too expensive to cast equity actors. One thing that we have to be really careful about.
Any actors, not
Oh,
just
any
actors.
actors.
Any actors, they
Okay.
cut the whole program.
That's really disappointing. There is an ethical quandary here. And this is another fine line that we dance. Around volunteering versus being compensated. So the public, for example, years after they started, once they saw that there was success in the program and that the program had like citywide attention and it was something that they were going to be able to continue, they were able to collect funds to retroactively compensate every single performer who's performed as part of Public Works. So every participant, an honorarium of, I think, like $1,000 to $2,000 or something. So everyone has been paid through in New York, something at least. We will do things like give people bus passes, like cover an Uber ride from time to time. We feed people on Saturdays and Sundays a full meal, a full hot meal. So we try to sort of like make up for the fact that they're volunteering in these other ways. And we can do this partly because like it feels different. What am I trying to say? You always have to ask yourself, am I really giving our participants something of value for what they're contributing to our programming and our project and our storytelling? Because if I were to take a cynical view, I would tell you, here's an opportunity for Seattle Rep to look good in the public eye, right? Like we're doing something that is for the community. It is. And also like we benefit from that. That's a strategy. So we have to be really thoughtful about who we're paying. If we ask them to do something above and beyond, are we paying them something? If we ask them to come in and sing a song for our gala, do we give them the same honorarium that we give the professional actors? In a Cornerstone setting, for example, I feel like it's a little bit different because even though there are paid individuals who are part of the staff who are making the project happen, it does feel like everybody knows that everybody else on stage is also a volunteer and we're all kind of like in it together. I'm here for the event, for the experience. So I would just say that I don't necessarily have an elevator pitch for you, except to say, when that elevator pitch is being developed, think long and hard about that, like potential space for exploitation.
Boom, boom.
Well, and I think also thinking about that space in comparison to like how it could be said to say, okay, we can't support the community this way, but here's a different way we can support the community. If we're not willing to do this part, maybe we can do this other thing.
Yes. And if that's the case, then like if we can't afford to do the whole thing, like we can't afford to pay everybody, we can afford to feed you every time you come. We can't afford to cover your travel. We will give you a stipend, but we won't give you a salary. And we're doing this for joy. We're doing this together for joy. Yeah. To invest in ourselves.
Well, and in the community and the community of actors too, right? Like you're saying,
yeah,
like people might need experience, and if they can't get experience from this theater anymore, this might be a way to like bring people in to get experience so that they can go other places. Because if you have nothing on your resume,
yeah,
you know, you can't get a job.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gold. An anti-elevator pitch. See, I really like that. That was really good. So helpful, so inspiring. They're lucky to have you do what you do. Gee, very lucky. And we are too, to have you come to see us.
Friend, I am so grateful that you
have invited me back again. I am humbled that you all find anything of value in what I have to share. And I'm really, really grateful for your time, your attention, your very thoughtful questions, your hearts and thumbs ups and everything. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking this seriously. I think community-based work is a significant part of our future. I think it's what keeps our art alive.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. More beauty. Any last questions for Angie before we let her go back to her regular life? Someday I hope to meet your wife too. It's always, I love seeing everybody's pets, but I also like to see families and all the rest of it. We're so blessed by you.
Jesse's hand is up.
Oh, where? Jesse, go. Sorry, I can't see it. Go, Jesse.
I know, I'm so sorry. Hi, Angie. I joined this, there we go. I joined this conversation a little late because I'm a yearbook teacher and I have yearbook things to do. But I heard that you mentioned something about how you find it hard to find writers that are willing to work within the public space. What would it be like for a writer who is interested in that more collaborative nature of storytelling as opposed to their finite dialogue that needs to be punctually accurate? Like what would you say to a writer who is me, I'll admit, who would be wanting to do something like that's my dream as a writer? I don't necessarily want to just shove off my play. I want to collaborate and get other people's stories in on the one I'm telling.
I love that. And I'm glad it's you, because otherwise I'd just be speaking into an ether. But I would say that the things that make a public works writer or adapter successful are if that person can center community. And what do I mean by that? I mean like that the story itself has a component that celebrates the coming together of people, that celebrates collaboration, that celebrates mutual respect, that celebrates learning from our mistakes, and that the playwright can create a piece or adapt a piece in such a way to give multiple people of multiple levels of experience a chance to shine. So there are a couple of one-liners and there are a couple of like mid-sized roles, and there might be 1, 2, 3 significant driving forces in the storytelling, but that it's not all about one person. And this is hard because over the decades, theaters have not had the funds to produce shows of scale. And so writers have been restricted and encouraged to write, like, I'm not gonna lie, in our season planning spaces, we're always like, all right, where's the 2-person show with one set that is a comedy? That's the reality of regional theater. So we have not cultivated that writing style because it hasn't, pageants have not been part of our goal. But I would say leaning into pageantry, leaning into those concepts, leaning into the idea of some scenes where multiple and different people can talk to each other, and you tell the story that way, in addition to the small intimate scenes between 1 or 2 who are sort of the driving force, would be what would make a public works show successful, and probably other community-based projects. I mean, like, it doesn't have to be 100 people on stage for it to be community-based, right? Like you can still have that experience, like in a Cornerstone setting when it's not the Summer Institute, which is what I was navigating. When it's the rest of their season, they're doing smaller shows with, like, it could be 2 people, it could be 6 people, but it's not a show of 20 to 40 as we do in the summer productions, or as we did. I'm not with them anymore, but yeah, so the number of people on stage isn't the key as much as it is how you're distributing the storytelling.
Yeah, giving all experience an opportunity to shine. I liked what you said about that earlier.
Yeah.
You also said adaptations. What kind of, like, does I assume that comedy is far more sought after, but as far as adaptations, because I love adaptations and literature and whatnot, is there like a go-to? I don't know how to ask this question.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit about the sort of sphere of adaptations, but I will say I have another meeting, so I do have to go pretty soon, but I'll speak to this. In our case, in public works specifically as a program, we generally do musical adaptations of classics. And this is because our parent program came out of the public theater, which was doing Shakespeare in the Park. And this was meant to be sort of another version of Shakespeare in the Park. It's performed at the Delacorte. I think the first couple of years it was on the same set as whatever show they were doing that year. So I think something like that. At any rate, so up to this point, it's mainly been adaptations of Shakespeare and the Greeks. But of course, we're having internal conversations about what constitutes a classic. And can we take, like, for example, I was in conversation with a Filipino writer who was like, there's something about the structure of the Filipino epic that could really speak to public works. So what he described in terms of structure, not necessarily in terms of a specific Filipino epic, because we are a multicultural project and we don't want to be too culturally specific for fear of then starting to get into some problematic presentational spaces. That the structure is something that we can use and adapt another story into. And in his case, or in the case of this Filipino epic, he was talking about how there's conflict between two parties, and that ultimately you reach a point where the two parties are going to hit that climactic conflict moment. And they discover they're in fact in relationship with each other, that they're like brothers or cousins, or like there's some connection that brings them together, and they realize that they can actually collaborate and solve the bigger issue that's before them, that's actually going to save everyone. And I'm getting chills just saying it. I just love that so much, this idea that, like, I'm in opposition to you, oh no, wait, actually we're on the same team, we're going to fight something together. So we start thinking about other kinds of adaptation, but the easy go-to up to this point has been Shakespeare and the Greeks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse, for your question. And thanks for your wonderful answer and the whole afternoon, NG. And I'm sure maybe Jesse could, if anybody wants to write to you, I have contact information. And NG's been very generous in inviting any of your thoughts, questions, or otherwise. Thanks, NG.
Absolutely.
We're so lucky to have you again.
Happy to hop on an individual Zoom if a further discussion, and also just to get to know all of you. So if you want to become friends, I would love to.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Everyone, I'll see you Monday. Take care, everybody. Be well. Clint, thinking about you and your family.
David, thank you. It's one thing to be able to do a job, but then to be able to speak about that job so eloquently is a separate task.
Oh my gosh.
She's like,
right.
Yeah.
Amazing, right? Yeah, real good.
Beautiful human.
And it's such unusual and full of heart and so good for communities and human beings. Thanks, Ash. That was really kind. Thank you all. Everybody, see you Monday.
Thank you.
Take good care.